We'd like to start punctually. My name is Ruben Arizmendi. I'm an attorney in San Diego, California. My focus is on asset protection and estate planning. But today we have a very special guest and co-host. It's going to be my great pleasure to introduce to you my co-host and guest speaker, Gregory Scott. Greg is currently the broker owner of Pacific One Realty and comes to us with a wealth of knowledge and experience in the many fields of many facets, that is, of real estate industry. Greg has been in business for over 35 years and has experienced and managed to thrive, that is, through 5 different recessions. He has owned and operated Century 21 franchise with over 55 agents, closed in excess of 1,700 government-owned FHA foreclosures. Maybe I should slow down, right? And so over 600 REOs foreclosures in the recent recession that we had starting in 2007 and carrying on through 2013. He's also a successful investor who owns quite a few properties featuring multiple asset types located across the country in numerous states. I'm sure you'll find his topic today informative and interesting with respect to current trends in the age of COVID-19. Greg, it's your show.
Well, thank you, Ruben. Good morning, everybody, and thank you for joining us on this call. Our hope is that you'll find this presentation interesting, educational, and informative. When Ruben asked me to give this presentation at this meeting, the topic was simply current trends in real estate. I added in the age of COVID-19 for the simple reason that current trends are inexplicably tied to the events occurring in the moment. And in this moment or framework of time, all trends are emerging in the context of the coronavirus. And until we get the virus under some appearance of control, we're at a minimum, we can see the legendary light at the end of the tunnel, or at least a glimmer. Trend following will pivot and gyrate in a way that will be difficult and in a manner not seen before in trend following. Many of the conclusions sought through trend following will become confusing and will lack the guideposts and direction normally expected for those who follow trends. I've been a trend follower for quite some time. I don't think Ruben was aware that I was a trend follower to begin with, so that topic he gave me was quite appropriate. I was a stockbroker for just short of a year at age 23, and then I went and segued into real estate and have loved real estate every day. I am lucky to have found a career that I enjoy. It doesn't feel like work, especially working in a city like San Diego. I feel like I'm on vacation all the time. So trends can be useful, a really useful barometer, acting as a possible guide or indication of what we can expect in the future. It seems like we are all desperate at this time to find those guideposts, some direction, some reassurance about what to expect going forward. Built into the concept of trend following is an expectation that if we study and follow the current trends in the marketplace, we can make some sense out of a mountain of data and somewhat figure out what's going on. But what makes trend following so difficult and so uncertain today reflects the uncertainty, doubt, and ambiguity about where we're headed with regards to the coronavirus. The current trend lines are all over the board, gyrating one direction, one period, then flipping into a new direction the next, sometimes even on a weekly basis. Although I'm a big trend follower, studying trends in today's current environment can be problematic at best and completely unreliable at worst, causing confusion and frustration when attempting to use as a guide or indicator of what to expect. Trend following is also a lot about studying graphs and charts. Originally, this presentation had a lot of graphs and charts, but I reduced that number to just a few, trying to keep them pertinent, easy to read, and simple to interpret. I want to give you all a brief outline of what we're going to cover today in this relatively brief presentation. This will be a broad stroke snapshot of current real estate trends, but on a national level. First, we'll take a brief look at what all of the asset classes are that comprise the world of real estate, and we'll talk a little bit about the factors that affect the trends emerging in these asset classes, and touch upon the questions so many people are seeking answers for. We'll take a brief side trip to compare the differences between what's happening now and how it compares or doesn't to the recent recession of 2008, 2009. In that regard, I'll show you a couple of graphs that point out clearly that this recession, at least with regards to real estate, bears little resemblance to what happened in 2006, 2012.
Right.
Then we'll take a brief look at two asset classes: housing, performing on the positive side, one of the best performing asset classes currently, and small businesses, doing poorly and experiencing significant distress on the downside. The last slide, and I only have 12, I was determined to keep it at 12, plus the two introductory. The last slide I think is worth waiting around for. I'm going to give you a list of resources that you can use to do some research on your own, whether it be in depth or just a simple check. And I think you'll find that really worthwhile. Okay, we've got a lot to cover, so let's get going. All right. Okay. That is, in fact, the topic: real estate trends and updates during the COVID-19 pandemic. Where's the next one? All right. There's me and my contact information. Feel free to contact me for any real estate needs, questions. Very approachable, very easy to work with. This picture, I played around with this when it first came out and was offering a $25 gift certificate if anybody could guess what the background was. Nobody really got it. But anyway, it's the 9/11 memorial. All right.
Nice.
Here we have the various types and classes of real estate. Residential and office are probably the two top ones by volume and magnitude. But it goes down the line: retail, industrial, hospitality, self-storage, senior housing, student housing. And there are other many types, but these are really the basic ones. All right, so here are some of the current factors that affect those trends. And this is, I try to keep it as current as possible as far as the next 30 to 90 days. Where will we be? What's the status of the stimulus programs? I just saw a little piece this morning in the San Diego Union that $70 billion of disposable income has been lost due to the extra $600 in unemployment benefits that Americans were receiving. That's pretty significant, and that number is, of course, rising. Number 4 is a really pertinent question with what's going on today, because the COVID-19 pandemic is going to hit real estate, but it's going to be more of a targeted situation where certain classes will get hit harder than others. And we can sort of pick those out and define those right now, but in the end, until it's over, that may gyrate like trends do. 5 is also really super important. What public policy, which is what the government entities do, whether it be municipal, state, federal, what they decide in terms of stimulus programs, eviction moratoriums, forbearance, is hugely is a huge factor in the direction of where real estate's going to go. Here's some more issues. How will the November election affect the real estate classes? It may be minimal. It may be dramatic. It's something left to be seen. A lot of people are curious and wondering about the status of distressed properties, which asset classes and how will that play out. Stimulus programs we talked about, eviction moratoriums, forbearance. Number 10, how long will this last? And how long will it take to get the economic engine running again? That is the $64,000 question, which at this point, we really don't have an answer to. Okay, here we're going to compare what's going on today as best we can with how the Great Recession of 2008, 2009 played out. Let's look at 2008, 2009, which really encompassed the time period of 2006 to 2012. And there it can really, I could have just put A and that would have been good enough, because that A really spells it out in terms of what happened in that era. And I'll show you a graph in a minute about what that looked like. And it becomes pretty clear about what happened in that recession, what caused it, how it played out, what the direction was. And then we'll look at today and what the factors are that are moving the market today. Let me check one thing. Okay. All right. I want to say a couple things about the next slide because it's the first graph. This slide is my favorite. It's my favorite graph of all time. I went into storage to pull this out because it just looking at this graph will tell you in clear vision what happened back in 2006, 2012. So back in September of 2006, I looked the market over and tried to get a sense for where things were going. I saw this horrible loan situation unfolding that started in about 2002, 2003. Countrywide Mortgage came out with this 10-year interest-only loan, brand new. I was a little leery of it at first, but I figured 10 years is enough to go through a cycle. And I put my daughter in one of those. So I thought that was okay. But that was just the start. When that kind of ran its course, 7-year interest only, 3-year interest only, all kinds of funky things were starting to happen. One of the most devastating ones was the no-doc loan that had been in play, but was designed specifically for people who were self-employed. Those people generally had good credit, good fundamentals, but they had a difficult time qualifying because they could write so much off. And if they were in a no-doc loan situation, but just provided bank statements, they had good credit, they were pretty much good to go. But what happened with that loan is it was like the first horse got out of the barn and went to a little stall next to the barn. That was for the self-employed strictly. Well, then somebody opened that gate and opened those loans up to the public in general. And that was a big mistake.
Kind of like
the other one that is pivotal here is the option arms. I'm not sure if any of you remember what went on back there in that regard, but the option arms were really deadly in the sense that they would be 3 years. They would start out at 3 years, maybe 3%, and then year three, it would reset and go to 8%, and so on. That was, if they ever needed a final nail in the coffin, that was probably it. So the next graph I'm going to show you, I went back into the REO market in September of 2006 because I could see this thing coming. I spent a great deal of time and effort in 2000, maybe 5 and 6 and 7, doing my best to talk people out of buying real estate, strangely enough. But in all good conscience, I couldn't put people into those types of loans because I knew they were going to get in trouble.
Right.
So when we back into the REO space, I built a small, relatively small office. We had maybe 5, 6 agents, and maybe 4 or 5 doing back office work. We worked for the banks and asset management companies, so I had a full-time accountant, 2 part-time. And we went to town, ended up selling a little over 600 of those assets during that time period. But when we started out, I was looking for a graph. I thought, you know, these loans were coming into play, and they were starting to get reset. Those ones that were getting reset, a good percentage of those were going bad. I thought, you know, if I could find the data and make a graph that showed when these loans were reset, we'd get a pretty good idea of what was going to happen in the future. So that, when I show you the next slide, it'll pop out. Now, one bar there is a month, and in that bar are all the different types of loans and the number that were reset by volume in that month. And I loved this graph. Here it is. Voila.
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
Wow.
so there we've got, you know, Alt-A, which was middle of the road, you know, gray paper, not good, not bad. Prime are the best loans in the purple color there. Option arm, subprime, agency arm. Agency arms were Fannie and Freddie, FHA, VA, and the securitized category. So look what happened here. It really becomes clear. Now, I went back into the REO segment just a few months before this graph started, which I marked as 01, 07. January of 07 is the first month. When I got this graph, You Are Here was probably May of that year. But when I found this graph, I thought I had died and gone to heaven, because it was a clear map for what we could expect in terms of when these loans got reset and what we could expect in terms of how many we were going to get. And they're broken down into Alt-A on the bottom, and then subprime arm, which is the biggest one you see there. And what's interesting about that is they died out, and then option arms and agency arms came into play through 2010 through 2012. And when I went back into this, I originally figured that it was about a 5 or 6 year run, and that turned out to be the case, because you can see there in 2012, the REO world as a niche began to fade. Okay, so I love that graph. I was referring to it all the time. All right, next graph. Okay, here we have the number of new homes built in the United States annually. This is a really interesting graph, because you go along up until maybe 2005, you can see it rising by the number there. We reached a peak of 2,200,000 homes being built in probably 2004, 2005. There was plenty of supply. And people were grabbing those that new supply right and left. It was like people were drunk on the hype of it all, I guess. You know, everybody knew somebody who had made a good chunk of money and it was the easiest 50, 75,000 grand they made. Well, that's an easy train to board. So, but look what happened in about 2005. Builders started building less. And it went all the way down to probably 2008. You'll see the gray lines are the recessionary periods. There are 1, 2, 3, 4 of them here. The one on the far right is actually real current. That's what we're going through now. And remember in my opening remarks about the gyrations and movement of trend lines? That's really a good example of it right there. It was way up, and at that point that it started going down, that was probably March, and it plummeted, then darted back up because the builders realized that, people, even during the pandemic, were buying houses. So they started building again. The problem is this graph shows you the seeds of one of the problems we're having today in housing, and that's the inventory. The inventory is down dramatically, and we need about close to 4 million homes to meet the current demand. So it's going to be a while before we would catch up to that. Through the statistics I follow, we need somewhere between 1.2 and 1.6 million units a year to keep up with the demand. And we just have not done that. So, and it's particularly acute in a city like San Diego because we're really in a corner here. And we've only got so much development land left. And when that runs out, and that's why you see a lot of vertical development, mid-rise, higher rise. You see it in North Park, along the Balboa Park, 4th, 5th Avenue. There's a lot of stuff, a lot of activity going on there. So you're going to see in cities like San Diego that have, where land is so expensive, and actual developable land is in short supply. You're gonna see an inventory issue in San Diego for the foreseeable future. Okay. All right. Here's another one of the primary reasons why we're in the situation we're in right now, with homes being in inventory being tighter than ever. Rates. This is a chart of rates, and this is about the span of my real estate career. And I did a lot of good work in the 8 to 10, 12 range. So higher rates don't scare me really. Now here we look at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 recessions across the board there. Now also, if you note, during those recessions, particularly 2000, the one we just came out of, 2008, that line that darts down, that's about 2008. So again, this trend following can be problematic during those particular times. And I gotta give the market a chance to catch up. Okay. I put this graph in because it's a federal fund, the Fed funds rate chart. Back in March of 2018, the Fed projected that the Fed funds rate, which is the rate that they charge banks overnight to move money back and forth to keep their reserves in check, and they had projected pretty much close to 4% in July of 20, and I think we're at 0 right now. So, so much for trend following. All right, here's a closer look at 2 asset classes, housing and businesses. I didn't pick these at random. I wanted to sort of give in this overview, pick out 2, one that was performing really well, one that was showing a lot of distress. Housing is doing really well. Supply and demand factors are undergirding it. But we've got a housing problem in that we don't have enough of it. Is the bottom line there.
Mhm.
I'm going to go to okay. I just found something this morning on housing, the housing market, as to why people are looking at this, and they're basing a lot of their decision making and their perspective on what happened in the market in 2008, and that could be a mistake, because there are so many issues, so many factors that make this different from that. We've gone over some of them already. In this Keeping Current Matters, which will be one of the resources I'll give to you at the end, I follow that one every day. It's just a great site. It gives good graphs. They're very clear. I look at that every day. And yesterday, so this isn't part of the slideshow, I read a couple more factors that support this housing situation in terms of how strong it is, and what's different about this one from the one in 2008. So the points we're in a much stronger position compared with a decade ago. More rigorous loan standards, and the household debt to income ratio, DTI, which is one of the big factors the lenders look for, is at a 4-decade low, and household equity is near a 3-decade high. MBA, the Mortgage Bankers Association, indicates that the majority of homeowners who took advantage of forbearance in this market, the one we're in now, have kept current on their mortgage, or it was paid off through a sale or refinancing. Secondly, this service sector-driven recession is disproportionately impacting renters versus homeowners. Okay. Recent study by Fannie Mae reveals that many Americans are not aware of all the options they have. The number of mortgages in active forbearance declined from 4.76 million on May 29th to 3.93 million on August 14th, an 18% decline in 2.5 months. Okay, let's go on to the next one. This next one, businesses. Businesses are really having a tough time, and this is not surprising to any of us, because it affects the types of things that we're all involved with or used to be involved with on a daily basis: restaurants, food, nightlife, local services, automotive, professional services, home services, and shopping. Yelp came out with a really interesting index called the Yelp Economic Average. And it's kind of like the Dow Jones of small businesses. It's very interesting to watch. Full service restaurants, not surprisingly, getting hit the hardest. Theaters, not surprising. Hotels are coming back, but they experienced some significant distress in March and April, particularly. And then in caps, I put some of the important points in, the really important points in caps. And this is a question I'm always constantly asking: at what point will temporary become permanent? And the next graph will shed a little bit of light on that. So this came from that Yelp Economic Average Index. It shows all the businesses that were actually open on March 1st and what has happened to them since this particular slide is very, very current. You can see what happened. The gray is temporary closures. The orange red there are permanent closures. And you can kind of get an idea of what's happening in that regard. There's restaurants, 53% of restaurants shut their doors permanently. Okay. That can be pretty devastating. Next we have, okay, current trends that will affect real estate that are not easily tracked or monitored. Lifestyle choices, migration patterns. Migration patterns is really big right now. People are moving from one city to another. Businesses are moving. There's the secondary, tertiary markets, which actually San Diego is considered a secondary or tertiary market, are actually benefiting from this migration. I've actually seen it. Some more people coming down from San Francisco, LA. A lot of people want to move here anyway, so that's just an excuse to do that. How will the patterns change? The work at home, changes of what people are looking for in a home and how real estate is marketed and sold. And that's a really interesting one because we've had to pivot and change really quickly in the industry to accommodate what was going on with the coronavirus. And you're now seeing virtual showings, virtual staging, all kinds of, Zoom open houses, all kinds of things going on there. And I suspect that a lot of that will become an integral part of the real estate industry after this is all over. It's worked well. It's very efficient. It's very productive. So I think that's something that's probably going to hang around. Restructuring of where and how small businesses conduct their operations. That's going to be one to watch. Meetings and large gatherings. That's going to hit a city like San Diego fairly hard. Good percentage of our economy relies on tourists and conventions and large gatherings, meetings. Full service, we've gone over that. Okay, in the arena of restaurants alone, more than 100 million square feet of space is in jeopardy of needing to be re-tenanted. And the extent of strain and stress that will put on that commercial sector may be significant. So these are all things that kind of are under the radar a little bit, but things that are important and will develop and unfold as this coronavirus works its way through to the other side. Okay. All right. Now we come to resources. This is the last slide. These are some of the best resources that I go to and use regularly. Marcus and Millichap, I love that site. You can sign up on that site. They won't bother you. It doesn't cost anything. But they issue some outstanding reports in all the asset classes, bar none. And they dive deep into all of those. So you can really get lost in that. But get on there, take a look at that, and get on their mailing list. And if you have to sign up on their site, I would encourage you to do so. They don't bother you. There's no obligation to do anything else. But that's well worth it. U.S. Census Bureau has got some amazing graphs and data. You could totally get lost on that site as well. Keeping Current Matters is the one that I like a lot. As I mentioned earlier, I check that daily. And I think you can get that if you get on their simple mailing list. If there is a subscription, just go to my website, scroll down to where the Torrey Pines Golf Course is, and you'll see a click, great blog. Hit that, and you'll go right into Keeping Current Matters. Great site, great site, and it's daily. Worldometers info, I love that site. They give live numbers. It's quite fascinating to watch. The numbers move up and down for all the various metrics. And then Economic Policy Institute is good. It is slightly biased toward middle working class, but it does give some good information. Inman News is kind of a holdover for me from the REO world, but I still get a lot of good information from them. And then the last one there is good information for what's going on with the COVID-19 pandemic from a state and county level. And there's great data on that. They break it down by zip code and so on. So with that, I guess we can open it up for questions.
Yes, Craig, thank you. What a fantastic presentation. Very concise. There were a couple of times there where I wanted to jump in and say, hey, now's the time to ask questions. No, it wasn't. We didn't really clarify that to everybody, but we wanted to wait until the end of the presentation for people to speak up and ask questions. And this is where we're at right now. So any of you who are currently online through, you can always go through the chat. And I don't have anything in the chat right now, but I do have a question that we had discussed beforehand, and I think that it's really relevant and important question. So Greg, since you've had such a strong background in dealing with distressed properties, how do you see that segment performing as a consequence of the pandemic unfold?
Gosh, that's a great question, Ruben, and one that I'm asked a lot because people who know me know that I've been involved in that REO foreclosure space for quite some time. What I think is going to happen is that there will be distressed properties, but I think they're going to target sectors like the commercial sector harder than others, harder than the other sectors. There's another sector that I watch called the commercial mortgage-backed securities. Mortgage-backed securities was something Wall Street came up with back in the middle of the last 2008 recession. What they did was they took all these loans, basically, in a nutshell. I can tell you what that was about. They took, maybe a portfolio of a couple thousand loans and securitized them, and then sold them on the market. They got great returns. Wall Street loved them. They were clamoring for more, which they were accommodated by what was going on in the market at that time with we referred to them as liar's loans. And at the beginning of that cycle, back in 2006, 2007, we used to joke that all you had to do was show vapor on a mirror and show up at loan signing and you could get a loan. And it was a joke in the beginning, but in the end, it was more true than a joke. And that's how far that came, because it was that easy to get a loan.
Okay.
I think the things, the mortgage, commercial mortgage debt in terms of securitization is a big sector, huge sector of that commercial pie. It amounts to about $3.7 trillion. So that could be negatively affected, and depending on how deep this goes, how long it lasts, there could be some opportunities there for people to pick up some assets in the distressed arena. Forbearance is going to be a big metric to watch. In fact, if I were to recommend that you all watch two metrics, I would say forbearance would be one of them, and the other one would be unemployment. Those are the two that are going to be really important to watch in terms of how this situation with the pandemic unfolds. The other thing that's really important here, as I mentioned earlier, is the public policy piece. What part is the government going to play on every level? What are they going to do? What are they not going to do? They had a lot to say about what happened in the last recession, and they're so far having quite a bit of input on this one. You can drill down and look at things like the stimulus and
right.
how beneficial that was to have in place, and what it's doing now without it. That was the 70 billion and counting that I referred to earlier.
Well, the stimulus was helping keeping people in their homes, in their rentals or purchases, right?
Absolutely. Allowed them to continue to pay rent, allowed them to make their mortgage payments, allowed them to pretty much go on as they did before. So without that or something close to that, you're going to start to see a little bit of distress in that market.
Right.
I actually wanted to bring up a couple other points.
Greg, are we going on another topic? Because I got a question from Joyce, somebody you know. Would you like to take that one on first?
Sure.
Okay. She says, Greg, would it be better to pay off the home mortgage right now, wait and refinance, or just hang tight for the business areas that may develop untenanted spaces? Why not refurb to public or residential housing? I'm not sure, and that might have been a different question, but it is a different question, but it looks like it was stuck right there with your question, Joyce. So I don't know if you're asking you wanted to address both those questions. Did you get the message, Greg? It's right there in the chat.
Those are two separate questions.
Yeah,
they're two separate questions. Okay, good. Joyce, thanks for clarifying.
Okay. Well, let's see. The first one about should you refinance your mortgage? I would probably need a little bit more information in terms of, okay, there's the question mark right now. Wait and refinance.
Joyce, you want to give Greg a little more information? You're welcome to.
I owe less than $30,000 on my home mortgage, and what I'm hearing from folks who have longstanding mortgages, they refinanced recently because the mortgage rates are roughly like 2.5% or lower.
Correct. Yeah, Joyce, just right off the top, I would say this is a great time to refinance. The rates they're at an all-time low. I mean, they've never been this low, probably all the way back to record keeping. So you can get a mortgage in the 2.5%, 3% range. And just based on what you're telling me so far, I would recommend just simply refinancing. There's one thing about refinancing that people don't really look at, and that's, well, let's say they've had a loan in place, a 30-year loan in place, and they've had it for 10, 12 years. So that loan is about a third of the way into its amortization, where more and more of that payment is going towards principal and less towards interest. When you refinance, you reset that entire amortization schedule. So once again, you make your payment, and you'll see a great deal of it or less of it when you refinance is going towards principal and a lot more towards interest. So it's useful to kind of factor that into the equation. But if you've got a rate that's 0.5% to 1% or more over what you've got now, that's worth looking at and probably worth doing at this time.
If my,
you.
sorry,
Oh, go ahead.
I'm not able to turn my video on because you guys have it restricted from doing so.
Oh, I'm
And
sorry.
that's okay. I mean, like I got circles anyways. So I guess my thing is since I've owned my house for less than a year, I'm wondering, I understand that it's good to refinance. I know that my loan is, I think, for a 15-year because evidently that was the lowest I could get. Now, if I refi now, or let's say in just the next month or so, is there a way to refi it for less than 15 years? Maybe like a 10-year or a
Sure.
5?
Sure. Well, 5, I don't know. And your amount is actually quite low. Where are you located? In Iowa or something?
Yeah. I wonder if you knew that.
You remember.
Hi, Joyce. How you doing?
I'm
Good
doing
to
well.
see you.
Thanks.
Good to see you.
We put your picture up there, Joyce. I hope you don't mind. We
Yeah,
don't
the
see
picture's
circles.
up there.
We
Yeah,
don't
it's
see
fine.
circles. You look
Yeah,
great.
yeah, you look good, Joyce. Iowa's serving you well. I grew up in Iowa, so I'm well familiar with the state. Great state. Joyce, with a $30,000 balance, you've got several good moves. You could pay it off. It's just a personal choice. If you need a little bit of a shelter for tax purposes, well, then it's probably worth looking at that as a factor. But you're really in a good position. You can go back in and get a 10-year. That would be worth looking at. Get it paid off sooner while you're still getting the benefits of a tax deduction, tax shelter. So I think what I would do, Joyce, is refi on a 10-year if you're comfortable with the payments. You might be able to get lower. I'm not sure how far out or how low the banks will go on an amortization situation, but it's worth looking into.
When you say amortization, I'm looking at, mine is a fixed rate loan, and I am like basically doing like the snowball effect from Dave Ramsey. So every few months or so, I drop a nice chunk down toward principal. Is it toward principal that I'm supposed to be applying my extra monies toward, or is it?
Well, when you make extra payments like that are over and above your normal amortization schedule, pretty much all of that goes towards principal reduction.
Okay. Okay.
That's a good thing. That's a good thing.
Yeah, very good. And Joyce, I think the second part of your question I believe had to do with repurposing space.
You know what?
Yeah.
Was that your question, Joyce? Or?
That was my question. And that had to do with Greg's, one of his slides was comparing housing versus businesses. And if businesses were folding, then those untenanted spaces would be untenanted, and there might be a loss in funds or revenues to the city. So my question is why doesn't the city just turn those untenanted, used to be business spaces into housing?
Well, first of all,
Good question.
it is a good question, but you're also talking about the private sector that owns a lot of that space.
Right.
And so it isn't in the government's preview to go in and disrupt that. Now, it's not to say that those owners of those buildings that start experiencing that distress won't look at that or go in that direction. It goes along with really the time we're in. We're in a period of tremendous, almost daily change. And you really have to embrace change. Don't run from it. If you're waiting for a train in a spot where there are no tracks, then you might want to consider moving and finding.
Don't you want to like build your own tracks then, so that you can eventually invest your money in locomotives?
Well, you could if you had the wherewithal, of course, but that was abandoned for a reason, so who knows? But
Okay.
there will be, your question really leads into, reutilization of space, and you're going to see a lot of that.
Right.
It just depends on if, like in restaurants, those generally don't lend themselves to residential settings.
Joyce and Greg, I'm in a situation where I've talked to so many of my colleagues, attorney firms, big firms, small firms, and many are saying, we're not going back. What's the point of having all that overhead and having to pay all that rent and a big building, a big office space, when we are successfully operating out of our homes? And of course, we know that Twitter and Google and many of the huge businesses are considering and contemplating and doing that too. And
Right.
so there seems like there's going to be a huge amount of square footage out there that's going to be needed to be repurposed in some way.
Yeah, I agree. And that's one of the big questions about what's going to happen with these various sectors, and what's going to happen with the space. Can it be repurposed to make sense? The first thing I did when the pandemic started was do a complete assessment of everything that I was in, and made changes where I could, and sort of hunkered down. But I think that I thought by now, this is August, when I was projecting and thinking about the future back in March and April as this pandemic was unfolding. I thought by August and September, based on what other countries were doing, how they were handling it, that we would have been looking at, or at least seeing that light at the end of the tunnel. And the fact of the matter is we're not. And until we see that, until we see some glimmer of that light, I wouldn't recommend anybody do a lot of trend following. And furthermore, I'm not sure about the rest of you, but since this pandemic started, I've had this sort of low level of anxiety and stress, just kind of like a little gremlin on my shoulder. Not really strong, but just there. And as I was preparing for this presentation, I realized that a good part of that anxiety and stress that I was experiencing was because I follow all these trends. It's like watching too much news. And
Exactly.
so I've made a decision to cut my trend following down about at least 50-60%. And
I have
with
a
the hopes
question.
that I'll be settled down.
I have
Yeah.
a question. Is it a good time to sell a house? You have a house and we're thinking of selling it, not selling during this time. Before you go on, I just want to let you know that you did our trust, our family trust. Ruben,
Oh, Celia.
you
Yes.
did my mom's brother's trust. So anyway, thank you. Anyway,
Yes, you're welcome.
just wanted to mention that. And I have a question.
Thank you.
Joyce, are you a teacher?
I am. I teach at
no,
Southwestern
Joyce.
College.
Is Joyce a teacher?
Oh, Joyce.
I am a specialized instructor for a special population, yes.
Oh, okay, because I could see, I'm a teacher, a former teacher, so I could see the classroom. I got all excited. And anyway, this is a good time to sell a house?
Absolutely. It's probably one of the better times. Now, the answer to almost every question in this day and age is it all depends. And, but generally speaking, houses are being bid up, well over asking. We're seeing 10, 15, 20 offers on properties when they get listed now.
Wow.
Tremendous competition
Mhm.
for um,
There you
for
are, Sarah.
homes, and tremendous competition for homes. So it's a if you want to get top dollar, this would be one of those windows of opportunity right now. Definitely.
We're downsizing and we have this 3-bedroom, 2-story home, and just my husband and I. So we thought maybe we should just sell the house, but we didn't think it'd be a good time because of COVID and
Great time.
so it is a
Great
good
time.
time. So I
Great
should start packing, huh?
Oh yeah, yeah, absolutely. Well,
Hey, Greg.
if you sell, you're gonna go over on the buyer's side as well.
Yeah.
And if you're gonna go into a condominium, there's generally less competition in that arena, but you have a better chance of getting I've been telling people, a good buy today is getting the property,
Right.
being successful in obtaining the property, because it's tough unless you've got people are coming in with all cash, removing contingencies.
Wow.
Right.
It's brutal. It really is.
Yeah, and you know what, Greg? Something that could have been maybe a little even more clearly, explicitly defined is that the real estate market is booming. I mean, there is such a high demand, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Certain factors came to mind. Again, it all is related to the pandemic. A lot of sellers took their places off the market thinking it was not a good time.
Yeah.
Not wanting to be exposed to the virus, which made it even harder. It caused the inventory to go even lower.
Right.
So this is a super time to do what you have in mind.
See, we didn't know if we should sell or make it a rental, or just rent out the house.
Well, yeah, sure, that's an option. I mean, holding on to property in San Diego is really never a mistake in my book. But it all comes down to kind of what your situation in total is, Celia. But if you're wanting or needing to scale down, this is a great time to do that.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I took your phone number, so I might call you for questions. That's okay.
Absolutely.
Of course.
Absolutely.
Of course. We're coming up on the 11 o'clock hour.
Okay.
This was originally designed for 45 minutes with question and answers to follow. If there's more interest, more questions, I'm sure Greg and I will be willing to stay on for a little bit more, but we're 3 minutes away from our targeted close time. We don't have to close at 11, but if you have anything more, now's the opportunity for you to do that.
Thank you.
I'm not leaving. I have more questions.
Okay, great. Greg, they're probably all directed towards you.
Greg, do you have time?
Sure, absolutely.
Okay. So when it comes to refinancing, I know that the bank is going to determine what percentage they're going to lock down on. Does that mean that my credit score is going to be hit again when they refi? Or when we start looking at refi?
Hit in what regard, Joyce?
Well,
Every time, well,
Right.
yeah, point wise, because when I moved here, when I started establishing the bank and then changing out the cell phone, everybody had to take a hit. Everybody had to check my credit score for some odd reason. And so my credit score, which used to be like 800s, is now below that, which makes me feel a little anxious because it's not perfect.
Oh gosh. And
I like having my credit score in the 800 because that helps with futuristic purchases and whatnot. So
sure. Well, my first suggestion would be what caused that, as you indicated, was loan shopping. You went around to get the best rate, and every time you did that, that lender had to run a new credit report to see what your score was. That nicked your credit, and that, it sounds like, added up. If it's just once or twice, that inquiry on your credit report is not a really significant hit. If you do it over and over again, it can become, just by the nature of the algorithms of credit scores, But generally, that's not going to affect you. And don't worry if your credit score goes from 840 to 835. You're still good. You're still golden. It's still good to go.
It actually
Oh,
dropped
perfect.
to, it dropped to 750.
That's a substantial drop. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I thought too. And so,
But did
Um,
you, Joyce, can I ask you this? Did you
Sure.
really need to go to several different places to find this? It
I
seems to me.
didn't. I stayed with the same bank.
Ah, okay.
And
Yeah.
they ran my credit scores and whatever, and they approved my loan without any problems. Because I was going to lay down a huge chunk of cash,
There you
Right,
go.
right.
and just leave enough on, like the 35,000 range or so to play well with everybody in the sandbox and, get that
Yeah.
get that nice tax benefit type of thing. But the thing is evidently they said that the first time that I had applied for the loan or the financial backing, I wasn't able to find a suitable house within the first time frame. So I started looking further out geographically from my initial location, found a house, and the bank stated that they would need to run another credit check.
Oh, wow.
Really.
Yeah.
Well, with the situation you're in right now, I mean, you start with the bank you're with on a refinance and see what they can do for you. It's very likely that they'll be able to accommodate you and be competitive at the same time.
Okay.
And you might just do one other check. I know lenders won't really play their cards out until they see what your cards are. But you can get an idea for it, and you can certainly go to the market or call me. I'll give you some advice on what you're going through at that time and what rates you're looking at. But as far as your credit getting hit, try to keep that as a minimum to the extent you can, and start with your existing lender and see what they can offer, and go from there.
Okay. So I know that my original goal when I moved out here was to buy a home and have 35,000 or less on the mortgage. And, my projection was to pay off the mortgage within 5 years, but with COVID and the uncertainty of time and blah, blah, I'm hoping to pay it off in less than 3. Only
Good.
because I'm trying to follow the Dave Ramsey plan where I just want to be debt free.
Good.
Right.
Good.
That would
Sounds
be
like you're in good shape.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Your title on your presentation stated that it was going to be about the real estate trends as well as trust and estate.
That's me.
Oh, that's you. Okay.
Yes, that's me.
I'm off the hook here.
Yeah.
You
And
might
here-
want to stay though.
Yeah,
So
I
my
would
question,
ask,
go ahead.
okay, if you have a very specific question, yeah, and I'd like you to look at Hottie'sMendyLawFirm.com for some general information too on estates and
Could
trusts.
you spell that out for me?
Yes. Do you see my name under my face? Can you see that or not really?
Yes. Yeah.
ARIZMENDI. That's my last name, and it's lawfirm.com. That's my website, and there's a ton of information there. But I'm perfectly happy to answer your question, Joyce. You've been a real good trooper here, helping us with the question and answers.
Thank you. So my question about trust and estate, what is the difference between a trust versus the estate? And what steps do I need to do to leave my house or finances or whatnot to a particular one or two individuals? And no,
Okay.
I'm not suicidal. I am one of those planners futuristically that if something happens, I want everything taken care of so nobody's squabbling over whatever's left over.
Right. Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely. The difference between a trust and estate, let's start there. In reality, The trust is the legal document that allows you to transfer your property from you to yourself. And then upon your demise, I'm not saying you're suicidal either, okay?
Gotcha.
But upon your demise, that property goes to your beneficiaries, whoever or whatever they may be, because many people choose to donate to charities. But if you have family members, that's usually where you want it to go. And the corpus, in other words, the assets that are in the trust, they form a part of your estate. Your estate is essentially what you're leaving, the assets that you are leaving to whoever it is you're leaving it to, your heirs, your beneficiaries. And the distinction, a lot of people say, well, what's the difference between an heir and a beneficiary? The short answer is that an heir is somebody who by law should be entitled to receive something if you don't have a trust, if you don't have a will. These are people that go through intestate succession is what we call it. These are your children, your grandchildren. A beneficiary, on the other hand, is somebody you've designated in a trust to receive something. And that could be anybody. Doesn't have to be a person related to you in any way. I hope that was clear enough.
Yeah, so what I heard you say for summarizing purposes is that the non-beneficiary, the other term that you used, is for someone who you birthed
An heir.
or adopted. The beneficiary is someone who does not necessarily be blood kin. They could be family member, or they could be an organization that you support.
Yeah,
correct?
Except there's one thing I need to clarify for you, Joyce. And in every state I know, including Iowa, if you adopt a child, that child is considered an heir at law if you have no trust, but also is typically should be dealt with in some way in your trust. In other words, your adopted child is legally your child. And if you don't talk about him in your trust, that could create a problem. I don't want to get you all confused with legalese, but a pretermitted heir is an heir that has not been dealt with in some way, in a will or trust. Okay, so if you're talking about adopted, be aware that that's a person that should be covered in some way. I mean, you could, maybe the adopted child did not turn out the way you had hoped. You can take every single one of your children and say, hey, you guys are disinherited. There's a disinheritance clause in most trusts, every trust that I'm aware of.
Well, just so everybody knows, I have no children, no adoptees, blah, blah.
Okay.
I'm a single, period.
I'm available for adoption.
Do what for Greg?
I'm available for adoption, Joyce, if you're looking for heirs and beneficiaries.
There you go. There you go.
I'll be careful on that one. Okay, so Ruben.
Yes.
Are you stationed? No, wait, not stationed. Do you live in San Diego?
Yes, I do. I do live in San Diego. I work in San Diego. What few people realize is that any attorney that's licensed in the state of California can actually do a trust anywhere in the state of California. I don't have to be wherever the property is located, for example.
But you can only provide services to individuals who are looking to establish trusts and estates in the state of California.
That's correct. That's correct. I'm not licensed to practice law in Iowa.
Yeah.
And so
okay.
I wish I could help you.
Because I'm sitting here like, I wonder who I can get that's reliable and trustworthy.
What city are you in?
It's fine. I live in the little town of Fairfield. I am about 30 minutes east of Ottumwa.
Oh, Ottumwa.
Oh, okay.
Iowa City is about, I would say 90 miles away from me.
Okay. What I want you to do is I want you to go online and check to see if there's an Iowa City or an Iowa State Bar Association. If there's a Iowa City City Bar Association,
Mhm.
many of these associations consist of attorneys who have been vetted by their state as attorneys that are competent, capable attorneys who can handle estate planning for you and can do your trust and your wills and your powers of attorney. And here in San Diego, being the city of the size it is, we have the San Diego County Bar Association that actually has a lawyer referral and information service. Some bar out there may have the same thing. And these are attorneys like myself. I'm part of that panel who have been vetted by the state and by the county. And so we're typically referred to people to do their living trust.
Okay, cool. Thank you. And what is the average fee for me to be able to speak to this individual?
Yeah, most attorneys that I'm aware of, my colleagues, will do an initial consultation. They try to keep it down to 30, 40 minutes to see if there's going to be any way they can help you or you're interested in them. But some will go as long as an hour, if there's so many questions. But typically that initial consultation is free. But I must warn you, there's a huge range in what it's going to cost you. Over here in San Diego, there are attorneys that are allowing it for $1,500 to do a living trust, and there are attorneys that are charging $6,000, $7,000 to do a living trust. So there's a huge range of fees, and so try not to be too shocked.
Well, I'm sitting here like how maybe I can't do my floor, or well, maybe I need to hold off on this for 6 months so I can build up some cash. So it doesn't
Joy,
so it doesn't eat into my emergency funds,
Yeah. If you don't have that trust set up and all that entails with a pour over will and a
Declaration of trust.
power of attorney for durable power of attorney for health and so forth, really, really important to have that. I can't recommend that highly enough. I've seen a lot of situations that have turned out sadly and could have been avoided if people would have just set up a simple trust.
If there's no other key message that I should get across is that the alternative to setting up a trust is a probate, and probates can be disastrous. You can have a $500,000 home that'll cost you maybe $30,000 to $40,000 to probate.
Yeah, the probate isn't fun. And I've only heard horror stories from the clients I used to work in previously, where they state that they have $1 million home and it gets tied up in court, and it could be dragged out for 3 to 5 years, and they have family members who could have benefited from the funding or whatnot.
That's
just
right.
historical that, their experiences that they're sharing with me. And I'm just like, oh my God.
Mhm. Yeah.
Who would you rather see get your what you have left in your estate? The government, or designated heirs and beneficiaries, or causes, things that you want that money to be directed for. So really, really important, Joyce. Get that.
Yes. Please take mine and Greg's word on that. Okay. We're well past the hour. I'm sure Greg and I would be glad to answer more questions. I don't know if we can do this maybe in a different setting or something. It's very specific, and I'm not sure how much you really want to get out into the world there. And in other words, this is being
right now, I don't care, but I mean, I just wanted to get the basics of information, and predominantly the information about the refi or refinancing of the current mortgage, as well as, understanding the difference between the trust and estate and where to go to start the
Right.
process.
Great,
Yeah.
great. Okay, the only reason I'm kind of cutting you off, Joyce, is that I'm thinking this is being recorded and there's a lot of your personal information that's getting out there. So we can somehow edit that, I'm sure, so that, but you're not alone. You're not alone. What you're talking about, there are many people out there that have those same type of questions that you have. And we do appreciate those.
Yep, not a problem. I appreciate your information.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, good seeing you, Joyce.
Yep,
Okay.
same. You guys take it easy, okay?
Hey, you too.
Well,
You
you
too.
as
All right.
And-
Thanks for the presentation.
All right.
Okay, you're quite welcome. And I want to, anybody who may be listening or seeing the video afterwards, I want to thank Greg Scott for being such a great speaker and so informative for all of us. I think it was a very good experience. I learned something. I'm sure everybody who was tuned in learned something. And this is
Thank
going to
you.
be available on Facebook and other platforms for time immemorial.
Forever.
Okay, Greg. Thank you so much, Greg.
Thank you. You as well.
All right. That's it. We're calling it a day and I'm closing out.
All right.
Have a good one.
All right.